Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Get to Know UIC, Get to Know United in Christ. Today I have the pleasure of being joined by UIC's Amber. Amber, thank you so much for taking the time to come hang with us today.
Hello.
I know this has been tough for you. I'm so glad that we were able to find this slot, Amber, because you've been in the middle of 24s lately, haven't you?
Yeah, actually, that's my new schedule. So it's actually my schedule's evening itself back out. The last year has been a little rough, but it's been
I'm
very
so
unpredictable. I'm kind of settling into a new normal. So
Excellent. And for I'm sorry for folks who maybe don't know where you're working these days. Remind folks what you're up to as a very essential worker right now.
I'm an EMT with a local hospital-based system right here in Lewisburg. My coverage area is about 30 minutes away, but I'm here.
We're glad you're here. So thank you for finding this time with us. This is going to be very, very cool. So Amber, for folks who maybe haven't gotten to know you yet, how long have you been connected with United in Christ? How long have you been a member or just like a part of the congregation there?
I grew up in the church, so I've been here for a long time. I don't exactly know when it started. I know my grandparents started us coming back, and my dad.
Yeah,
So we've been here for a long time. I've been baptized through the church. I was confirmed through the church, and did a lot of the church things with the youth group. I did a lot of stints at Came Out Luther
yeah,
over the years I grew up there. And I was able to join one of the ELCA youth gatherings down in Atlanta.
that's so
And
cool.
then after high school, I kind of dropped off. So I just started coming back about 2 years ago.
And it's been a blessing. And at this point, not only have you like started coming back, but like you've jumped in with both feet. Amber is now one of our newest council members, serving a term on church council. It's when folks are ready, like we bring them right in and get them to work. It's been really cool to have you on board with the leadership of the congregation.
I've
Uh,
enjoyed it. It's a lot to learn. There's
oh,
a whole different side of the church that I've never been involved with. So
say it louder for the people in the back. Like, that's exactly it. I think I've said this a million times, but like, still one of the most life giving councils I've ever been a part of. And even now, it's been a pleasure and a joy to be able to work with this council and with you in the midst of this. How many Zoom council meetings have we done now where we've gotten together and still managed to get what needs done done. So I'm so grateful for your willingness to be a part of that. Even if it is, we swooped you right in and got you right onto that leadership with
glad
your
for the
return.
opportunity, and a big thank you to Cami who was showing me how to go through the paperwork because the
Ah,
treasury report is well over my head. So
hey, mine too. Hey, don't tell anyone it's over mine too. I'm not a Awesome, very cool. Well, so I mean, in these years, then, like it's been a couple years now since you returned, and maybe there's part of the question is, what made you want to come back to United in Christ? What was it about in the midst of that hiatus that made you say, you know what, I think it's time to give this another shot?
it kind of felt like coming back home.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody still was accepting of the fact that I hadn't been there in quite a few years. And then my life had taken a few different turns. But there was no judgment there when I
sure.
came back. But when I started my new job, I really felt like I needed that centering point. There's a
Yeah.
lot of bad roads to go down with certain things of the job there, and this felt like the best way to keep myself out of trouble, honestly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's something to be said about that, right? Like I'm sure like the things that you see on a daily or weekly basis, right? Like that adds up and that takes a toll after a while. So to have a community who
Nice to have a place to come back to that cares, and there's definitely this has been said multiple times throughout these, but you kind of fill up your tank to go on through the
yeah,
rest of the week.
absolutely. Yeah. That's very cool. That's very, very cool. So what is it now? After having reconnected with the congregation in this way, and in very exciting ways, might I add, what is it that makes you want to be invested? What is it that makes you want to be on the leadership of this congregation? Because it would be so easy to just kind of come in, be there for worship and leave again, right? But what is it that makes you want to keep coming back to this community and to this
It's
congregation?
definitely the people
Yeah.
in our congregation, and this was a really good way to reconnect because I had been gone for so long that I feel like I'm getting to know everybody all over
Oh,
again.
sure.
Um, there's a lot of people that have been here for a long time, and I'm terrible with names, but it's been a great way to actually, especially on council with our phone calls, I'm reconnecting with people that I haven't talked to since I was a kid. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And what I love about that is like, again, it's a community that wants to keep that connection, right? Like that was part of council's idea, was to maintain this practice during this time in particular, to maintain this practice of calling all of our members every week, right?
Yeah.
That we send out the groups that you get to call for, that we assign the group, and then you over the next couple of days connecting with everyone that we can, right? And what I found really encouraging was at our last council meeting, the decision that like council found enough value in that they, even if and when we do go back to in-person gatherings, like let's keep that going, right? And maybe not weekly,
Right.
but monthly at least. I thought that was such a cool thing to hear from them. And I'm so glad you were able to find that, like that means of reconnecting in a very like
It is,
in-depth way.
especially because I'm classic Lutheran. I sit in the same pew every week. I know we're often pressed to go out and find other pews to sit in, but we don't.
You
I
grow
don't.
familiar
I
with your
just-
neighbors, and you start to form roots. I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily talk to the people that sit in the front left side of the congregation. I'm in the back right side, and that's where I kind of hang out.
That's
so
right.
It's forced me out of my comfort zone there, but it's been very rewarding to be able to talk to people and hear what they have to say.
That's so cool. That's so very, very cool. I'm glad to hear that like there's a mutual blessing in that. Not only is a blessing for the folks who are being called and getting to hear from council members, but like also our council members are finding that value as well. Like it's nice to just get to catch up with folks. Oh, that's so cool. That's so very cool. So in this time then, in this time together and your years being kind of raised up at United in Christ, where is it that you have seen kind of God at work among the people here? What are the ministries that have excited you over the years? What opportunities have presented themselves that you're like, yeah, this is something that like we got to be a part of?
I love that they keep up with Camp Mount Luther.
Yeah.
And the youth gatherings. I know our youth group in numbers fluctuates throughout the years because
Oh, yeah.
we are a smaller congregation.
Right.
But there's definitely a large group coming through like soon. They're on their way up. So to see that continued, that they would have something to keep themselves tied to the church. Also, I'm a huge fan of the turkey and waffle dinner. We've been doing that since I was a child.
Nice.
I didn't get to make it this year, but I did have some nice special people throughout the congregation drop some stuff off for us at the station.
Hey,
so
that's
we're still able
cool.
to be connected. But I remember doing that as a youth, and even like a before youth group as a child. Like,
Yeah, right.
so,
You kind of get drafted into it early, right?
right. Yeah, we had a blast. So,
That's very, very cool.
but I love to see that with the youth, to continue that through. Because even when our numbers do get small, they still have something to look forward to.
Right. And even if they are small, they become, that sense of community just tightens up, right? Like,
Yeah.
Even if there are only, 4 or 5 youth in the youth group at a time, like, they are a very close-knit group, and the value that the congregation has with each other of like knowing that there's a community to surround them and support them is exactly what's being replicated with among that group of youth, right? And I hope that was the case for you growing up, because I know
Absolutely.
it's yeah.
I mean, half the youth was my family.
Well, I mean, I guess that helps, right?
It does. But then I also like grew up with the rest of the youth. But I don't necessarily talk to the people that we were still in youth group with, but when I see them out, like, and it's really nice to see them
Right.
in church now with their kids and
Totally,
seeing all that.
absolutely. Yeah. To kind of see these things kind of come full circle in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. That's so cool. That's so very cool. So I mean, when you think about all those ways in which you connected over the years and you found those senses of community, what then has this community meant to you? What has it meant to you to be connected in this way, to grow up with this crew surrounding you, and now to be a part of it in new ways today?
Oh boy.
I know this is the big question. I know this is where it starts to get personal, really.
Right. And I really think it just comes back to the fact that I just felt like I came home. I came back home. There's people here that the judgment was not there.
Sure.
Like, and everybody takes turns in their life, and things don't quite go as planned.
Right.
And when you come back from years of hiatus,
Right.
they're still there,
Absolutely.
and welcoming at that point.
Exactly. And I'm really glad that you're willing to share that, because I think that's something that like we don't always think about. For those of us who are in church every week, right? Who do come together to be part of this community and like haven't had that time away, I think sometimes we take for granted what that community means. And I think oftentimes we think of ourselves as like, yeah, it's no problem. You come whenever you can. Like, if you come back, like, we know internally that, like, none of us are going to shame anyone, right? But for that person who has, spent some time away, that that message is internalized in a different way. And there is that kind of sense of hesitation and a little bit of anxiety of what is it going to be to reconnect, right? How will it be seen?
It was hard to come back because, I mean, obviously not perfect. There's still things that I'm working on.
All
so
of
I'm sure
us,
like
yeah.
there's people outside the church that are going to see this and be like, oh, well, she does this.
Sure, sure.
Like, but those are things I'm still working on. We can't wait till we're perfect to come back. And
Right.
that was something big to get over in my own mind before I came back.
Oh.
That it's okay not to be perfect to be there.
Right, and that is a beautiful articulation of what it means to be genuine in community, right? You don't have to be perfect, and not even to come back. You don't have to be perfect to come up. You don't have to be perfect to show up. You don't have to be perfect to be there every week, right? Because Lord knows I'm not.
Thank goodness.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of our tradition, right? That's what we do when we gather for worship. The first thing we do is we name that we are not perfect, right? Yeah. When we gather together, we start with confession and forgiveness, and we name before God and our neighbors that, like, hey, got it wrong again this week, messed something up. But we immediately then hear God's love and absolution in the midst of that, right? And if that's not a way to radically ground a sense of community, I don't know what is. So if you're out there feeling like you are not good enough to come to church, or if you're not good enough to come back, bull crap. Right?
Like, come on in. We're not either.
Exactly. And I think maybe that's something we got to own up to a little bit more as church, just to say, like, none of us have this figured out, right? And that's why we get together. That's why we come together. That's so good. That's so cool to hear. Because again, I think sometimes we lose that perspective if we haven't spent that time away. We don't think about that narrative as much. So I'm very glad. I appreciate your sense of willingness to not only come back in the midst of that, but like there's also like a sense of vulnerability that goes with that to just try it, right? It can be a very vulnerable feeling to just go out on a limb and say, okay, this is worth it, but I don't know what it's going to look like, right? And I think we as a community can learn a lot about how to honor that vulnerability and respect that.
It was, I mean, with me, when I came back, they never skipped a beat. Like, there was not an issue there. So that was very relieving. Because you're right. I didn't know what to expect. You never know what to expect.
Right, exactly. So well done, y'all. And well done, Amber. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's so cool. Thank you. And in a lot of ways, thank you for giving us a second shot, right? Because that's also part of it, too. It's not just about, like, maybe the narrative is internalized as, like, I have a second shot, but, like, you give the community another chance, too. And that's beautiful. Because, so good. Cool. Thank you. So now, Amber, as you've kind of shared in these leadership roles, we've had a lot of conversations about what things will look like for us in the weeks and the years ahead at the congregation. But for you, what is it that excites you in that? What is it that you hope and dream for this congregation and this community as you think about where God might be calling us into God's future?
I'd really like to see, and I know it's really hard with my work schedule to even bring this up, but I'd really like to see like a Sunday school or small groups come back into play.
Sure.
I feel like that's another thing that I really miss from my childhood was and Belinda. I know everybody talks about Belinda, but she was fantastic, and we had her like as a child all the way up through.
Right.
But it just, I don't know, with the Sunday school and getting like to actually talk about the lessons with small groups, I think that would be something super exciting to see in the future.
Totally.
I think I really super love the book studies that are going on now. I think that's great. I haven't been into the Zoom meetings for one yet.
That's all right. And in a lot of ways, honestly, I often think like that is our adult Sunday school now these days. It's just on a different night, right? It's a Wednesday school instead of a Sunday school. But I think there's creative ways to like think about like how did we do it before and what was essential in that and how can that be maybe repackaged, moved in terms of timing, or what does it look like to get those essentials for us today? And I think there's some cool experimenting we can do around that. And I find that kind of stuff exciting, the possibilities that are there. It's good to know that like even our leadership is thinking about that and thinking about how are we going to tackle these things. Very, very cool. Well, Amber, this has been absolutely marvelous. Thank you so much for taking this time. But before we go, I give everyone the chance, and I warned you that it was coming. So now this is your opportunity. Is there anything else you want to share with the congregation? Anything you want to share with folks at home? Any Amber words of wisdom? Anything that you any truth bombs you need to put out there for folks? This is your moment.
Earlier, I have no words of wisdom, but I did. I was yesterday watching the testimony that Garrett Baker had put up.
Yeah.
Which kudos, Garrett. That was wonderful. It's hard to get that stuff out there, but we
Yeah.
appreciate it. And I
Absolutely.
remember one thing, I wrote down one thing from it, and that he was reading a part of a book.
Yeah.
And in that section, it just said, no one is excluded from the joy brought by the Lord.
Absolutely.
And that's another one of those affirming, we're not perfect, but we're not excluded. Come on back.
Bingo. Bingo. And together we will find joy, right?
Yeah.
Together, grounded in the Lord, grounded in what Christ and the love that he offers us, we will find joy in the midst of that.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what a great plug. Thank you for reminding us of Garrett's video. That's still up on the Facebook page and on the group. And actually, we'll be hearing again from Garrett later this week. I sit down with him for
So excited.
an interview like this to hear more about his time at United in Christ in particular. So stay tuned for that. That's this Friday as our special guest. But for now, Amber, thank you. This was absolutely marvelous. This was super cool to get to hear from you, and I appreciate you taking the time. Good luck on whatever next long shift you've got coming up. and all patience and strength to get through that. So thank you, and thank you for hanging out with us today. This has been really nice.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And to everyone else at home, God's continued peace and blessings in the days ahead. Again, thank you, Amber. And we'll talk to everyone hopefully sooner rather than later. Bye for now.